Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Project Vapour Evening Dash. And we're in for an absolute treat as it's Season 5 and we're here at Round 3 at the beautiful circuit of Bahrain. This 5.3 kilometer circuit is going to be a extremely hot one here tonight as the drivers are having to contend with 36 degrees, evolving grip of roughly 32 degrees on circuit. But here in the sandy deserts is going to be one that everyone wants to get the win. This is going to be the exciting one, and we're into our qualifying session, which is a one-lap shootout to get it done and dusted. However, let's take a look at our championship because, well, it's heating up, and most certainly one you want to keep an eye out for. For our hypercars, Brandon Kruger holds on 41 points with Connor Bergstrom in second place on 40. Carl Oosthuizen chases him down in third place with Jaco Kutzer holding on to fourth, tied with David van Veek. Jan Blichnout in sixth position with Mario Cynical and Issam Domingo in eighth. Darren Miller in the Lamborghini holds on for ninth, and 10th goes to Andre Sorodio. And across the page, we got William Lacrange and Ari Fenter rounding out the 12 hypercars in the championship. That being said, a quick look over to our GT3s, and it's Kurt Bukas who holds the top of the leaderboard with 50 points. Mayath Musa in second place. Vian Putter, along with Daniel Jordan, Paul Fenter, Greg Kutzer, Byron Lagren, and Rob van der Heerve. Daniel van der Venter and the Club Lason hold on to your top 10. Turning over the page though, we've got Mordrake Claessens tied with Jan Russell. Only Brandon finds himself in 13th with Rainer van der Walt, Rudy Venter, Werner van Rooyen, Dylan Prudgy, and Donovan Leyer rounds out your top 18. So with that being said, our drivers getting ready for their qualifying, and this is where life is going to get interesting because it's a one-shot qualifier that the drivers need to contend with and want to make sure it's a good one. No one wanting to lose a bit of time out here, and we've got our GT3s out at the moment to get themselves up through the order with, so far, Kurt Bukas putting in the best lap time of a 2:01.1. Daniel finds himself into second place, but Mordrake Claessens going in, beating him to the punch, up into second. A 2:02 set by Daniel van der Venter. With everyone trying to find that little bit of pace, Herman Percival puts himself up the order, going to be more than happy on his run. And with the drive currently at an all-time high, you really want to make this work in your best as they give it everything they can. Jan Russo hoping that's going to help out in his race. Chris Collison currently up in Sector 1, fastest through Sector 1, not quite fastest in Sector 2, as Jeffrey LaRue takes the fastest lap time, continuing on his charge. Sector 2 looking good for Chris Collison, hoping that he can get himself into the top 5. He's running a full tank versus a short, lower tank, which most of the other drivers do. And at the moment, the Kluberson out there in first place is the man to beat with a 2-minute 0.4. One-shot qualifier does make life a little bit more interesting for our drivers as everyone's trying to get that solid run and see exactly where they can go. But utilizing a little bit of track tighten this week, a couple of drivers having to think outside the box and ultimately trying to find that little bit of a run. Byron holding on to the bottom of the pack at the moment, seeing what he can do. Only Brandon yet to go out. Werner van Rooyen and the likes of Mahias Musa and Dylan Prudgy have not gone out onto the circuit, and I wonder if they will be heading out for qualifying or if they're going to start at the back of the pack to see how it's all going to work out. So with Vian Putter and Byron still out on track, they're on their out lap. They're going to see whether they can put a good time on the board here. Vian giving it everything he can with the next minute to try and move forward. Byron trying to give a hard charge as well. He's got one more lap to try and see if he can put himself up the order. So far, though, it is Leclerc Besson who holds on to the lead with Chris Collison in second. Jeffrey LaRue holds himself in third. Herman Percival, Greg Kutzer, Paul Fenter, Kurt Bukas, Daniel Jordan, Mordrake Claessens, Jan Russell, Daniel van der Venter, Rainer van der Walt, Rob van der Heerve, and we've got our remaining two drivers, Vian and Byron, looking to try and see if they can make it work here. It's going to be a solid drive from both competitors, really pushing as hard as they can to make it work. It's up in Sector 1 for Putter. Not the fastest though, but he wants to get down to the 201 like the rest of the field in the mid-pack have been able to do. So far, our top 5 have put in a solid lap of a 2 minute, our top 4 with a 2 minute, with a 201 in 5th place going to Greg Kutz, who hopes that that's going to be enough to really mark a solid run. Out on his lap, trying to push harder, Mahayath Musa finds himself back out on track and is going to be more than happy to give it everything he can. So Mahayath Musa looking to put a lap in. Can that work out? And see what he's going to do. So Byron, fastest in Sector 1, hoping it's going to help him out here to carry that little bit of momentum as it's into Sector 3. Come for Vian. He's absolutely fighting tooth and nail to make it work out for him. And at the moment, needs to think, what's the big plan? What can he do to make it work up for him? Can he get that solid run to just try and come across the line to move up into the top 5? He will cross the line, and he does move up into 1st place. Vian, with a 2 minute .323, takes the fastest lap here, and now looks to see if he can carry on. For Byron, it's going to be a hard charge on his part. He wants to make it work, as our hypercars will start to make their way out onto the circuit to start their one-shot qualifying. Byron hoping that this is going to be a good one for him. Carries on that little bit of momentum. Ultimately, this is going to be a wild moment. Byron holding on to 15th at the moment. Faster than anyone in Sector 1 and Sector 2. Continues to push that little bit more. Hoping it's going to be enough as he comes across the line. Byron will rocket up into 1st place and lead out the GT3s. A stellar run from the competitors and massive run for our GT3s. But now we move on to the hypercars as it's Slater who's out on the circuit with the Peugeot, trying to see what he can do. Steven Vessels in the BMW. David van Veek looking to push his way up through the order. Andre Sorodio wanting to make it work here tonight. Out in the Aston Martin Valkyrie. They've got a little bit of time to get it done and dusted with quite a few drivers waiting to go out. Isam Domingo leaving his pit box. Now wants to try and see what he can do to move up through the order and ultimately get that solid drive. Our hypercars have been warned. Listen, take it easy. You will land up having a bit of cold brakes, cold tires, or it's going to go the complete opposite. So make sure you are well aware of it. So at the moment, it's a good run for Slater, trying to get his momentum up through the order, wanting to make a solid result here as he starts his qualifying lap time. He needs to get sub 2 minutes to make it work and to try and start out the Peugeot 908. And this is the 2nd generation of it as it's developed the rear wing versus the no rear wing approach. We'll be hoping that he can keep that little bit of time. So far, trying to maximize his pace up in Sector 1. Going to be a hard push for the driver. Bahrain, never an easy circuit to go around at the best of times. Everyone finding out that if you push a little too hard, you land up losing the rear and costing yourself a ton of time. So Jock hoping that's going to work out in his favor. Just to give it one extra push. So far, not the fastest in the 1st sector. That's going to Steven Vessels, who immediately comes off circuit. Steven, after getting that run, and Jacques finds himself going off circuit. That's going to cost both drivers a little bit of time out there and cost them possibly the win. Andre Sorodio pushing on forward as we do see Slater bails off and into the wall. Unfortunately, that is going to be his qualifying. Done, dusted, and out of here. He returns back to pits, but Sorodio will be looking to move on forward. The Aston Martin Valkyrie currently out on track is not the quickest in Sector 1, but if he can make it work in Sector 2. Steven Vessels, however, currently trying to find a bit of time out there, will be the first hypercar to put a time on the board. Can he get it done, though, as they absolutely keep the foot deep in it? Steven leaving it all to chance here. 7.8% of virtual battery and also low fuel run means that he's going to try and put a good time on the board, as he will be the first one with 152.5. First one across the line with a time on the board. Going to be smiling on that run, as we do have the Aston Martin Valkyrie coming through of Serodio, trying to get a little bit of momentum up in Sector 2 over the rest of the field. Sector 1 was his personal, but let's see if he's going to be able to get at 152.5. He will come across the line, put himself into first place with a 46.9 on a stellar run. Absolutely gave it everything he could down to the wire. Issam Domingo finds himself out on track with Ari Fenter now also looking to do his first flyer. Domingo looking to try and put the Project Vapour up on the top of the leaderboard here, with Serodio currently holding on first place. Steven Vessels finding himself in second. Serodio will be hoping that Issam can try and help lock out that first row and continue on the charge. These drivers absolutely dialing it in, trying to find that little bit of momentum. Domingo pushing it all the way through, does come up to the line, and he will take the fastest, a 146.9 as he came across the line. And so far, the quickest hypercar out on the track. Ari Fenter trying to give it everything he can. Brandon Kruger now gets onto the circuit to try his luck, to give it that hard push, to really see if it makes a solid run. With unfortunately 1 minute and 14 seconds to go, it's going to be a now or never situation. Couple of drivers racing to get out the pits, racing to try and see if they can set a solid lap time, and will be hoping to finish out on the top. A 146.9 by Issam Domingo is the one to beat, and at the moment, Ari hoping to do everything he can. He's done his personal best in the two sectors, but not enough to so far be the quickest. It was Jan Bluchnoot who finds himself the fastest out there, and will be continuing his solid push to make it through. Can he find that little bit of time to really put himself up to the top, as Ari in the final sector comes up to the line, will cross the line and moves up into third place. A solid result on him. Brandon Kruger, next driver out. So far, trying to find just a little bit of time to see if he can move up through the order. It's going to be a monumental uptake for him to try and get the fastest in Sector 2. He managed to take it away from Issam Domingo, but can he bring himself to a 146.8, which will put him ahead of Domingo? Well, he's still got the fight of Carl Oosthuizen taking the fastest in Sector 1. He's hoping to try and take that car to the start finish line, take a solid run in qualifying, but ultimately gonna see what he has to do. Kruger comes across the line with 146.2, absolutely decimating the target time, and Bluchnoot will find himself with a 146.4. Carl Oosthuizen now next up to see what he can do up in Sector 1 over the rest of the field. He matches in Sector 2. How's it going to look when he comes across the line for the RTA team? He will take up third place. Not quite where he wanted to be, but had to try and dig deep as Connor Bergstrom comes across the line. Wow, oh wow. We're in for a race, folks, and drivers looking forward to what they can do here tonight for round 3 of the Project Vapour Evening Dash, powered by Track Titan here at Bahrain. And everyone has solidly put in an absolutely incredible lap time, but will be hoping to get a solid run for the line.
Drivers go to the grid for a race start.
So, with that clearance, we've been told to start making our way to the grid. Drivers looking to see if they can make it work here tonight. We'll be looking for a solid result as they start lining up on the line. Now, with that being said, everyone hoping to get a solid run. Let's quick run through the grid. Hopefully it all works. It's going to be Brandon Kruger holding out the front row. And we'll be hoping to get a solid run at the sharp end of the field. Jan Blichnout will find himself in second place on that front row. Carl Oosthuizen, Issam Domingo, Andre Sorodio, Connor Bergstrom, Ari Venter, Steven Wessels, Jaco Kutzer, along with David van Veek, Darren Miller, Jacques Slater, Mario Sinnekel, and Jelmer Mulmeri going and rounding out our 14-car field in the hypercar class, looking to keep a solid run. It's going to be Byron Landegren holding on for first place in the GT3, Vian Pater, Leclerc Besson, Chris Collison, followed by Jeffrey LaRue, Herman Percival, Greg Cooks, Paul Fenter, all looking to get that run. So on our third row, Issam Domingo, Connor Bergstrom will be finding out as our drivers get going. Unfortunately, our grid still acting a bit funny at the moment, but we'll keep an eye on it. Now, Brandon Kruger will be looking to try and get ahead of Jan Blichnout as they set center stage on that first row. Two friends, former teammates, now rivals, find themselves looking at the green, along with Vian Pater and Leclerc Besson holding on for the GT3s as it's lights on, lights on, lights on, as they come up to the line here in Bahrain. Who's going to get the jump into the corner? And it's an immediate charge for everyone. Carl Oosthuizen immediately getting a solid run, looking to go side by side and bring it 3 wide into turn 1. Blichnout stuck on the outside line, will be pushing as hard as he can as our hypercars feed on through. A little bit of argy-bargy coming through, but all looking relatively clean. Well, as I said that, unfortunately it does look like Uri a little bit slowed up out of turn 1, immediately got caught up by Vian, who is currently holding the GT3 field. Byron Landegren trying to close up right behind him, as everyone hoping to get a solid drive will be absolutely keeping their foot in it. Byron, who wants to hunt down that first place, doing everything he can out in the Porsche, wanting to go and fight his way through. Great to see everyone trying everything they can to move up the order thus far so early on into this race, and having to think a little outside of the box at the moment as they charge on for the momentum. A solid run between all of our drivers at the moment, as an overtake for position immediately sees Jaco Couture going and getting past the likes of Darren Miller, who had a little bit of a difficult situation off the start line, trying to see if he can get that solid run, but we'll have to think, what can he do to make it work? How can he close up the gap and really find that little bit of time? At the sharp end of the field though, Blichnout finds himself in third place behind Carl Oosthuizen. 2 RTA drivers up here to move are going to be helping each other out. Issam Domingo pulling Andre Sorodio, while Connor Bergstrom hunting him down. Steven Wessels trying to move up through the order, keeping a very close fight between one another, and Vian holds on to the lead of the race at this stage of the game. Everyone hoping for a solid charge to try and make it work. Unfortunately, we did have that little bit of contact happen a little bit earlier, and let's see if we can quickly take a look at what happened between Connor Bergstrom and Steven Wessels on their contact earlier into the race. So Connor Bergstrom and Steven Wessels finding themselves coming to odds with one another. And this is not. That is the overtake between Rob van der Heever. So, trying to pull up the replay. There it is. The contact that happened a little bit early on. Bergstrom, late on the anchors, trying to keep it all together, and a little bit of a nudge coming in from Steven Wessels. Found himself slightly into the back, unable to move on forward there. And we do have Daniel van der Vente and Reiner van der Walt coming into a bit of contact with one another. That's going and slowing both drivers up a little bit more. So we saw this three-way battle once before, and now, unfortunately, it looks like yet again getting a little bit too close to one another. Both drivers pushing as hard as they can in the BMWs, but ultimately losing a bit of time out there, and we'll be thinking, right, what do we need to do? Unfortunately, it is Reiner van der Walt who finds himself off into the weeds, and now having to pick up the pieces of his race a little bit further down. A spin costing him a huge amount of time out there, and will have to hunt his way through. Conor Bergstrom and Serodio keep each other open, honest, and clear. Oh, landed up with a bit of rear end as the two battle out, going a little bit too deep into the corner. That unfortunately went and caused a little bit of a problem for Conor and Steven Wessels, trying a little too hard out there, pushing as hard as they can as we jump on board with Conor Bergstrom's car, trying to give it everything he can to move on forward. And you can see how the drivers having to really fight with the steering wheel to try and keep it all together at this stage of the game, but absolutely trying to think what's going to be the big run here. How can we get that solid dive and immediately try and go and move up through the order? So these drivers not holding back, as Rodeo now under pressure, as Steven Wessels giving him a run for his money on board with Serodio, who tries to get the pass. And we take a look back into the corner, you can see how this was not going to work out for Steven Wessels. Braked a little too late, and that opened the door for Serodio to come flying on by. Not quite what he wanted to have there, and ultimately needing to see what he can do to make it work, to really hunt down that opportunity as the battle on for P5 continues in the hypercar class with no one giving an inch. Brandon Kruger coming out of the final corner, takes yet another lap and continues to stretch open his lead as Carl Oosthuizen falling down the order, slowly being drawn in by Jan Bluchnoot at this stage of the game. Every driver finding that little bit of momentum, not quite finding the time. As we jump to our GT3s, Vian Putter leads out the GT3 field, still hunted down by Byron, who is keeping a solid bit of pressure. Leclerc Blasson holds on to third place and not giving up the fight. He still wants to try and really make it work out for him, as our GT3 field is still incredibly close. Our hypercars still keep with one another. As we jump on board the Asimon Valkyrie, you can see how much steering input's needed just to really throw the car around. Not having an easy time out there. Steven Wessels continues to keep the pressure on, looks to try and hold his position, but not having an easy drive as Conor Bergstrom got that pass done and dusted, moves up into 6th, and will be hoping to carry on the run. Immediately Wessels comes right back at him. It's a drag race between the two BMWs, and just behind, Jaco Kutzer of the RTA team keeps a little bit of pressure, finding a bit of a run. Ari Fenter, unfortunately, off into the dirt yet again. This race not working out for him, and he continues to just battle out as a big moment coming in for the likes of Jan Russo, who is still out there trying to push as hard as he can. He's got Mahath Musa for a bit of company, trying to keep the battle on and hoping to try and get the pass. He looks for the undercut, couldn't quite get it done. Had to think out a little bit more there as they keep the power on. Both drivers not looking to lose out as they're trying to move up in the championship. It's still incredibly close, but with only 6 rounds in the championship, you really got to lay everything on the line to make it work, to get that solid run up through the order. And ultimately, if you want to be at the top of the leaderboard, you need to think, What's going to happen? Jan goes for the attack on Mordred Claessens, gets the pass done and dusted to move forward. Issam Domingo finds himself off circuit and losing out a bit of time. Issam Domingo with a problem out on track. And let's quickly take a look at what happened to Issam Domingo with our Track Titan replay. So Domingo, a little bit of a snap on the rear coming out of the corner. Spun him around, was just able to point himself in the right direction, unfortunately costing him a huge chunk of time, and finds himself bailed down the order, having to try and reclaim a little bit of time. Conor Bergstrom around the outside of Andre Serodio as the two battle out yet again. Serodio try to lean, put a little bit of pressure, get that side drive, couldn't quite get it done. Bergstrom up into fourth. Now has a bit of a problem as it's going to be an attack for Serodio down the inside yet again. Tries to get the pass done and does it. A little bit of contact from Steven Vessels into the back of Conor as he's trying to follow on through. He's trying to also capitalize on it. It's side by side between both drivers and none yielding, with the likes of Conor managing to move forward. Steven takes the chance, gets the overtake done, and now Andre has got Jaco Coetzee and David van Veek for a bit of company to battle out for position. This is getting wild for David van Veek. It's now wait, find some time, and lay in the pressure to try and close up that gap, to try and make it work. Our Hypercar's putting on a grand show at the moment, and each trying to give it that solid push up through the order. Hayat Musa fighting out against Mordred Claessens, the two drivers not giving up, with Mordred trying to put his nose forward, and Musa having to open up the steering, loses out a bit of time. Conor Bergstrom finds himself spun out and pointing in the wrong direction. A quick look at what happened to Conor Bergstrom there on our Track Titan replay, and this is into turn one. Turns in, over rotates, gets a clip on the rear, and unfortunately spirals him down the order. He holds his brakes, but definitely going to be seething with frustration from 6th to 10th. And with that little bit of damage, that's going to be something of a gremlin to keep a very close eye out on the field. Everyone trying to give it a little bit more of a push, trying to see what they can do to move forward, and ultimately who can keep the drive as they push on here tonight. So far, Serodio leading this little gaggle. He gets hunted down by Jaco Coetzee and David van Veek, with Steven Vessels holding on for a bit of company. Daniel van Venter and Jacques Slater find each other out on circuit at the back of our GT3 pack. They're continuing to find that little bit of drive as our GT3s settle down into a groove. They will be waiting for the Hypercars to start making their way up through the order. David van Veek trying to see if he can close down the difference to Jaco Coetzee and also defend from Steven Vessels, while Serodio looks in the mirrors. Gonna be wondering, what does he need to do to make this work? How can he keep the drive as we jump on the rear cam, and you can see it's going to be a slipstream down the straightaway. A little bit of movement from Serodio to try and see if he can snap that toe. And down the brakes on the 007 Aston Martin Valkyrie to try and just get the run over Jaco out there in the RTA Cadillac. A little bit squirrely on the power yet again, trying to close up that gap, loses a bit of time, and ultimately trying to find that little bit of momentum is becoming a bit of a wily one for our drivers. Jaco hoping that he can carry it through all the way, and will be trying to keep that smile on the face. Ultimately, this is going to come down to the wire, and the drivers will have to still keep in mind that a pit stop is going to be needed as well during this race. That may go and change the entire way that they think of this incredible battle. So a solid run from each of the drivers, trying to make it work out for them. Everyone hoping to get that solid run. Monster of a gap starting to build up between the leaders of our Hypercars. However, it is our GT3s with Vian Putter setting the fastest lap time in the class. He's still getting hunted down by Byron at the moment, with no one doing a pit stop. They're going to be focusing on the drivers. Carrot was actually the first driver to come into the pit, so we were just talking about it. He drops down the order, with that pit stop. Jacques Slater trying to find his way back up through the order. The hypercar driver now a little bit further down from where he wanted to be. Finds himself 23rd overall and at the back of his class, trying to claw back a bit of time here to ultimately see if he can go on through. None of the drivers ahead of him will be getting the blue flag. He's going to have to fight through clear and consistently to just try and get those overtakes done. Jaco Kutsia trying once again to get the overrun on Andre Sorodio, not finding that little bit of time, and ultimately still in for the battle. The two holding on for the run as it's a big look down the inside. Sorodio snaps across the nose, keeps that drive going, and absolutely going and keeping his drive up for the run. Some monster competitors out, and you can see our hardest chargers at the moment with the likes of David Van Veek up 5 positions since the start of the race. It's Daniel Jordan in the GT3s that finds himself up 6 places since starting this race and is now finding that little bit of time to see if he can make it work for him, as we do get a little bit of a show from Jan Russo, who falls down the order. Russo not having an easy time out there, finds himself a little further down from where he wanted to be. He did have a little bit of a coming together with Jacques Slater, and let's take a quick look at that with our quick replay as Rousseau and Slater came together heading into the corner. The hypercar trying to carve its way back up through the field, catches into the side of the Lexus, unfortunately throwing it out wide, and Slater losing valuable positions and finds himself off yet again. Now having the field coming through, he will see Darren Miller going and losing it as well, as we cut to Miller losing the back end of his car. Connor Bergstrom nearly getting it in the neck as well as he continues on the drive. Not an easy feat coming through. Ari Fenter now also trying to slice his way up through the pack as well, trying to make a solid run. Bluchnote holding on to Carl Oosthuizen, seeing if he has a chance here to possibly go for second place. Bluchnote keeping a solid drive. Last lap time was 1:48.7, which is quicker than Carl Oosthuizen. Kyle out in the only manufacturer of his class, now trying to see if that's going to help him out a little bit into the race, and will have a bit of a difficult time as Bluchnote keeps the pressure in there for the Project Vapour team and wants to see if he can keep moving forward right into the slipstream. They're slicing through the GT3 field, but also can start affecting how the GT3s work and where they're able to make up that little bit of time. How they're able to keep moving forward is going to be the big question for each of our competitors out on the circuit. Big look around the Lexus at the moment, or the BMW at the moment, and that would be Jeffrey LaRue going and being next on the target as he tries to hold on, and a big snap coming out, and that is Bluchnote going and losing the rear end of the car. Finds himself off circuit, and unfortunately now down the order from a solid charge, he started falling adrift. Vian getting overtaken by the hypercars. Now has a little bit more breathing room as he utilizes the tow. Byron closes up under braking, not allowing himself to be caught out just as yet. He wants to make it work out on this run. Jeffrey LaRue and Leclerc Besson fight out for their top spots. And Leclerc holding on to that final step of the podium, will not want to go and lose out a bit of time. Right behind them, Chris Collison from the Stingers Racing team, looking to try and see if he can move forward with Paul Fenter of the Logistical Nightmare Racing team out on the circuit. Holds on to P6 and wants to see if he can really make it work for him. At this stage of the game, you're going to have to really think on what you can do. Jacques Slater into the pits, as we do see Karabukas gets the fastest lap time of the race. And immediately we also catch up with David Van Veek finding himself pointing in the wrong direction, spinning out, losing a bit of time, and that allowed Issam Domingo to open up that little bit of room. Greg Kutzer trying to hold on for his run. at the moment getting overtaken by our hypercars. The number 20 coming through and trying to make up a bit of time. That is Herman Percival. No, that would be a stop go for speeding in the pit lane for Jacques Slater going and getting caught out. So Jacques Slater finds himself tumbling down the order, and with the speeding in pit lane compromising his drive as immediately a 3-wide situation starts to build contact against the 88, and that is Connor Bergstrom. Had nowhere to go, trying to put it in the middle with Serodio, and unfortunately it did not turn out the way he wanted. Falls down the order, and that is a compromising run. Connor Bergstrom unfortunately getting caught out against Daniel Jordan in the GT3, and will be thinking, right, not what I wanted to have. How can I pick up the pieces of this race? Not going to be an easy time. Most certainly going to be a bit of frustration coming in for Connor Bergstrom, as he's going to have to try and pull his way through, and yet another bit of contact coming in for Greg Kutzer. So a quick look at what happened out there as he was trying to clear past Greg in the Porsche just ahead of him. Looked to go down the inside, swings it across. Greg having to lock up the brakes, nearly going and putting a hard impact into the rear of Connor, but it was just a way to stay alive. Ducked off to the left-hand side, and now it's going to be an interesting one as, Stephen Vessels boxes into Rodeo and clips the rear of our GT3. That is not going to be a happy camper for Chris Collison, as Paul Fenter immediately gets that pass done and dusted. That is really not going to help out the odds, and Serodio got out of the throttle, got caught behind. He saw what was going to happen, instead took the step back, allowed Stephen Vessels to try and push on forward, and unfortunately finds himself in a little bit of a difficult situation as he does open up the corner a little too wide, loses out a bit of time, and immediately, while trying to get past Jeffrey LaRue, gives up the position to Serodio, who is late on the anchors, throws it around the Porsche of Leclerc Basson, and now catching up to the leaders of our GT3 field. Trying to go a little bit longer into this race, trying to see what they can do to move forward. However, this is turning into a race and a half up and down through the field. Byron keeping in the slipstream, pulling himself along, trying to see if this is going to work out for him. Vian hoping to capitalize on keeping a solid run as we jump on board with the Porsche of Byron into turn 1. Down the gears, really late on the braking, tried to bring up the throttle as high as possible. Couldn't quite get that solid run out of the corner, but will keep an eye on the race ahead of him. Can he get that drive to try and get past Vian Putter? At the moment, it's not looking good for both their energy levels. Both running the same, about 18% left in the virtual tank, with Leclerc Basson sitting on 16.9, both burning through, trying to find that little bit of a run. But it's also Jaco Kutzer who finds himself in a difficult situation with Issam Domingo, both sitting in the 22 and 24 respectively. Jaco will be needing to pull the pits far earlier than Brandon Kruger, Carl Oosthuizen and Blythnote, while Domingo will follow suit for a bit of company out in the mix as well. Bucas trying to get the pass on to the likes of Rainer van der Walt, does get it done and dusted. Had to try and figure out where he could put that nose forward. Rainer didn't put too much of a fight, but allowed the pass to happen. Now trying to see if he can make it work for him here tonight. What it would be to try and hold on to such a stellar run, unfortunately turned into a stellar nightmare. Bucas trying to pick up the pieces of the race. Jacques Slater, unfortunately retiring the car, will be out of the race as well. So just like that, we have seen our first retirement of the evening coming into play in the likes of Jacques Slater. And well, with a stop-go 10-second penalty for speeding in pit lane, he'll find himself going and licking the wounds on a solid run. Chris Collison trying to catch up to Paul Fenter, keeping the pressure on. The Stingers racing machine keeping the pressure on to Paul Fenter. Paul last season ran a Lexus. He knows what that car is capable of doing. but needs to try and find out if it's going to work out for him while he battles out against Chris Collison, who will be hunting down the back of that BMW, trying to go as late as they can into the braking zone. Chris Collison, unfortunately, now down to 7.8% left into that virtual battery, despite being as close as he can to the back of Paul Fenter. Will start to think, right, this is not what's going to help me out here, as I will need to get into the pits a little bit earlier and not quite on the halfway mark as intended. So the drivers, everyone hoping to keep that solid run, will be thinking, right, what do we need to do to make it work here tonight, and ultimately to try and help with the pit stop. Fight out for the lead though, it's Vian Putter and Byron now trying to keep it all together. They got Ari Fenter in the Porsche, trying to see if he can find a way to sneak past without becoming too much of an interference, as Byron will want to try and see if the door can be opened up. As Ari looks down the inside, he gets the pass down the straightaway, and immediately Vian will be happier. That one doesn't have to move off the racing line, doesn't have to worry too much, keeps it nice and tight through the corner, and immediately Byron, having nowhere to go, has to think, right, what's the game plan here as we move into the last 36 minutes of this hour's race. Everyone hoping to get that solid drive, everyone hoping to move up through the order and see if they can keep themselves going in a very, very difficult race, as it's a constant fight for the lead. Byron and Vian still keeping the pressure on one another, with Vian running out a little bit wide to try and hold out immediate defense into the right-hand side. Goes immediately for a pit. Byron follows him through to try and see if that's going to help him out. Back up to our hypercar battle. Andre Sorodio and Steven Vessels fight out for 7th and 8th. Steven Vessels continuing to apply that little bit of pressure, looking for any opportunity to move on forward, with Sorodio keeping up a solid defense at the moment. Chris Collison into the mix, as a variety of drivers now find themselves heading into pit lane to get that pit stop done and dusted, and will be focusing on the drive of what can they do here tonight to really go and get the undercut and the overcut to work out in their favor. However, Daniel Jordan now finds that he leads out the GT3 field and will be hunted down by Herman Percival out there in the McLaren. Maeth Musa holding on for 3rd place at the moment, but all 3 drivers opting to go an extra lap compared to the rest of their field. Rob van der Heever will be following up in 4th place, but a little bit further down from where he wanted to be. So our drivers hoping for a solid result here tonight. They absolutely putting on a stellar performance, and will be thinking, right, what is the game plan? What do we need to do to make it work? As Jaco Kutzer, first of those to dive into the pits to get himself sorted out from our hypercar class, and we'll be hoping for a solid result here. Isam Domingo holds on in 4th place. He is running a bit low, 7.1 in the tank as he careens on through the field, does get ahead of Logistical Nightmare Racing Machine, and also clears on past Jeffrey LaRue of the Griffin Sim Racing, trying to hold on for a solid run, as Darren Miller finds himself spinning off yet again, losing out that bit of time, and that Lamborghini having an absolute nightmare of a drive at the moment. Each trying to figure out what he can do, and he twists it around yet again, a hard impact into the wall, tires overheated, and lots of damage to the car. I think he will be asked to tow the car back to pits. That car is out of the running, and Darren Miller will be our 2nd driver out of this race. Brandon Kruger, Carl Oosthuizen, Jan Blutnoot hold on to the lead of the race, as we do see our 5th place battle starting to liven up. Rob van der Heever losing out to Gerrit Bierkes at the moment, as our top 3 in the LMGT3s now find themselves into the pits and will be looking to move on up. Herman Percival, Maeth Musa and Daniel Jordan played the long game to see if it's going to help them out. Gerrit Bierkes going to give it everything he can to try and retake the lead of the race. Immediately, this is now a push down to the wire. Rob van der Heever going to also try and bring it in a little bit longer into the race as well, cutting it close at 5.1 virtual energy left, and that is going to be a monster to try and keep alive. As Jan Putter regains a bit of time, he jumps the likes of Herman Percival, he jumps the rest of the field and moves up into third in class, ultimately trying to push his way back towards the sharp end of the field as Jan Putter, trying to close up the distance, holds on to fourth. We'll be thinking, what is the game plan? How can we make it work for the two of us? Ongoing battles as Stephen Domingo goes, Issam and Stephen find themselves into the pits, getting themselves sorted out, and David van Wyk waiting to be released yet again out onto the circuit. Our leader of the race, Brandon Kruger, continues out a solid drive on his part. Best lap time is 147.0 in this race. Last lap time, a 147.4 to really make it work, as he's right on the cusp of losing out a bit of time here. 1.6% left in the tank, while Kyle Oosthuizen finds himself on 5%. He can go an extra lap longer in the race. Johan Bluchnoot holds on for third place despite losing out a bit of time. Still holds on for a podium, clear of Connor Bergstrom and Ari Fenter are the four drivers needing to see it through to the end. This is going to be a wild drive for each of our competitors as they try and go that little bit further. Jaco Kutzer, along with David van Wyk, Issam Domingo, Andre Sorodio, and Steven Wessels find themselves back out on circuit, and a drive-through coming in for Domingo. Issam Domingo, after all the hard work put in, finds himself with a drive-through for track limits exceeded. That is going to be an absolute gut punch of a drive for him. Bucher sets the fastest lap time in the GT3 class, but it is not to be flowers for Domingo, as he now finds himself with a drive-through penalty for track limits exceeded. So two penalties handed out here tonight, a stop-go and a drive-through, both in the hypercars. Both will be looking at what can they do to try and pick up that little bit of time. A solid fight from our competitors, ultimately going to come down to who can really make it work to get that solid run up through the order, and who has got enough in the tank to keep a big push. Connor Bergstrom into the pits as Johan Bluchnoot now exiting pit lane will overtake Connor, move up into that fourth position and look to try and rejoin the battle as Kyle Oosthuizen holds on for third. The gap's starting to open up, but the driver's still trying to dig deep at this stage of the game to try and move forward. So quick look through of our hypercar class. It's the likes of Ari Fenter, who still needs to pit, leads out the field with Brandon Kruger holding on for second. He's already done his pit stop. Ari getting into the back of the Stingers racing machine. Oh, that beautiful Lexus of Chris Collison. And now Brandon Kruger looking to try and take over the lead of the race. Mordred Claessens will be our third driver, unfortunately out for tonight in our GT3 class. Brandon Kruger now going side by side with Ari, pulled to look to the inside line, utilizes the toe. Ari goes and allows the pass to happen. Kruger up into the lead, has got the fastest lap time in the class, takes the lead of the race. Ari holds on to second for now, while Kyle Oosthuizen holds on to third. Jaco Kutzer finds himself in fourth position with Johan Bluchnoot, David van Wyk, Connor Bergstrom, Andre Sorodio, Steven Wessels, who's closing down on the gap there, try and move forward, and Issam Domingo, after serving his drive-through, will hold on to the top 10 of our hypercar class. But it's Gerard Bucas who holds on to the lead of our GT3 class. He's got that fastest lap time underneath his belt of a 2:06 to go and really make it work. Jan Putter holds on for second place with Byron chasing him down in third, hoping to close up that gap. Leclerc Besson in fourth position with Jeffrey LaRue. Paul Fenter from Logistical Nightmare Racing trying to see if he can catch up to the Griffin Sim Racing machine ahead of him. And Daniel Jordan out there in the Legos has been a little bit of a thorn in the side for some, but kept consistent driving through. He's got Herman Percival for a bit of company, holding on to that 8th position. Chris Collison trying to close up the gap as well with Mahath Musa, Greg Kutzer, along with Daniel van der Venter, Rob van der Hever, Rainer van der Walt, and Jan Russell, who now follows in tow, trying to pull himself along a little bit further into this race. Ari Venter first, now diving into the pits to get himself side by side as Russo trying to maintain his position, immediately having to defend against Reiner van der Walt, trying to generate some heat into those tires, but not having the easiest of runs as they continue on the fight between them. They will be thinking, what's the game plan here? Ari Venter comes down the pit lane and will be going and coming back onto the circuit, but Bucas, who finds himself so far in first place, is down to 18.4 left in his run, and will be thinking, what does he need to do to make it work here tonight? 8.3 over the course of 5 laps, and he's on 17.3 at the moment. So the percentage-wise, not looking good for the driver to go and see it through to the end, but going to give it everything he can to try and push that little bit further, try and see if he can keep a solid drive. Everyone now needing to try and knuckle down, focus on what they need to do, and ultimately, can they keep that solid run up through the order? As we do see Brandon Kruger, our leader, marching his way through. So far has been a dominating force with that 147. Last lap was a 49.5 with a bit of traffic coming into the way, but still finds himself ahead of Carl Oosthuizen, trying to find that little bit more in the bag to push himself further into this race, as Bucas holds on to the lead, but will need to pull into the box rather shortly to get himself sorted out, and hopefully to see if he can hold on to that top 5. He's up 12 places from where he started, but not enough gap between himself and Vian Putter to hold on to the lead of the race. As we do see Russell going and moving left to right, and immediately Rob van der Heever giving a quick flash of the lights, saying, sorry buddy, you gotta stop doing that. It's getting a little bit frustrating, but for Jan Russell out there in the Lexus, he's going to be trying to stretch those gaps to make it work. Paul Venter trying to catch up to Jeffrey Leroux as they close up between one another. Leroux holds on, trying to get that solid run up through the order, and will be focusing on the drive with Paul Venter keeping in close company at this stage of the game. Venter not wanting to lose out the bit of momentum in his car, looking for that top 5 finishing position to help him out in the championship. Well, Jeffrey Leroux will be absolutely thinking, what does he need to do to make it work? Bucas sets the fastest lap time of the race yet again, a 2:04 that last time out, and still managing to try and open up that gap just enough over the rest of his class, wanting to make it work out in the run. Vian Putter down to a 2:02.2 with Byron a 2:01. Leclubison into fourth with a 2:03 as Leroux comes across the line, just managing to hold the line on Paul Venter, but not finding that he's losing track of him. We'll have to think, right, game plan here, what can we do to move up through the order? As Bucas going in very long here for his stint out in first place, and still has 5.9 in the tank. He uses on average across 3 laps about 8.2 liters, 2% of virtual energy, and now finding himself that little bit further down in the order. He's trying to open up the gap, 17 seconds to Vian Putter, to see if it's going to help out for him. Daniel van der Venter pulls into pit lane and will be getting his car sorted out. So Daniel, not having an easy time out there, finds himself back into the box, getting sorted out. Was the first pit stop not going in his way to try and help him out, and he does get a refuel. So Daniel van der Venter doing a bit of a top-up. Something tells me on the first stop did not go to plan, and now finds himself in a world of hurt as he gets overtaken by Jan Russell and Rob van der Heever. Ron van der Walt comes on past as well, trying to see if he can keep up the momentum, and Daniel, unfortunately, still stopped in the box, getting some work done to his car, and possibly good damage that happened a little bit earlier as Bucas pulls into the pits to get himself sorted out in this race. Unfortunately, it did look like Daniel had a bit of contact with David van Veek. So a quick look at our tracked out and replay of what happened between Daniel van Venter and David van Veek as they're coming through. David van Veek out there in the Hypercar and the Alpine behind for Team RTA will be looking to try and clear on by. Oh, it's a side swipe that took on the steering and forcing Daniel into the dirt. And I think that ultimately led up to the yellow flag a little bit earlier on as Daniel found himself off circuit. Not what he wanted to have. As we go into the cockpit, a hard impact. You could see how that steering snapped underneath him, and a little bit of damage as well as he tries to bring the car back out onto the track. So not an easy time out there, and unfortunately finds himself waiting in pit box to get released and loses out a bit of time. Brandon Kruger holds on to the lead of the race while Kyle Oosthuizen trying to close down the gap, hoping for a solid drive on his part. As everyone settled down, the gaps start to just hold steady, and everyone hoping to keep that little bit of a run. Byron, however, now under pressure as he gets overtaken by our Hypercars out there, the Cadillac marching on through to try and get a little bit of run. Jaco Kutzer will be next trying to clear on through likes of Vian Putter. Gets a clear overtake and now focuses back on his charge to try and close up that big deficit that lies between himself and Jan Blutnoot for third position. 37 seconds between the two as they try and, 9 seconds between the two as they try and close up the gaps between them. Herman Percival under a bit of pressure as Chris Collison now caught up, looking for an opportunity to see what he can do as we jump on board of Chris Collison out there in the Lexus, hunting down Herman Percival, the back of that car, looking rather wily. The McLaren just absolutely getting snatched at the moment. And now Chris Collison looking to see if he can move on forward, looks towards the inside. Very interesting to peer on that far back. But he does see Daniel Jordan just slightly ahead, hoping to get the run. And Herman Percival will be looking to get his solid run. As we jump on the rear board, you can see closing the gap little by little, but is it going to be enough? It's going to be Chris Collison into turn one, late on the anchors to make it work. Can he get it done? He runs out a bit wide, and Herman trying to come back at him, but gets his nose closed off, and Herman falls back into 18th position overall. Chris Collison got the overcut, got the pass done, and closed the door, but it's not done yet as he immediately takes a dive. He sinks it in a little too deep into the braking, and that's going to allow Chris Collison to retake that spot. Chris managed to go and lock off that position early on, and now it's going to have Herman going from being chased to chased for the next 19 minutes. This is going to be mad, and a little bit of a touch between the two, but not enough to go and unsteady. A quick flash of lights from Herman, apologizing for that little bit of contact, a little bit of a tip of the hat of drivers as they now find that little bit of run. Chris goes out wide compared to Herman into the hairpin. Now it's down the long straightaway, and Herman's going to have a little bit of a slipstream here. Looks towards that inside line. Can he get it done? As he absolutely goes late on the anchors, but Chris Collison is able to go that little bit later. But now they start to find a little bit of a problem as our Hypercars come through. 9th position of SM Domingo, making quick work of Herman, and immediately takes down the inside of Chris Collison. Chris running out a little bit wide, will come off the gas a little bit, but will hope that SM Domingo can foul up the likes of Daniel Jordan ahead. But it's a straightaway that's going to be the big part here, both on the anchors. And Daniel Jordan having to brake that little bit harder allowed for the two to close up the gap. Herman once again trying his luck to make it work against Chris Collison ahead of him. And Daniel Jordan remains at the top of the spot. So a good drive from all competitors thus far to move on forward. And as time starts to tick away, you need to think, what is going to be the big plan here? How are you going to move forward? And where exactly can you make it work to try and remain at the sharp end of the order. Each of the drivers digging deep to make it work as the gaps start to open. But our fight for the lead in the GT3 class, Bahrain and Vian find themselves back in for the fight. It's 0.9 of a second separating them. Porsche driver hoping to get the upper hand of the BMW at the moment of Vian Putter. A monumental drive on both their parts. A late pit stop coming into play and going and working off one another. Vian now having to find out how he can clear through the back markers, and he will have Rainer van der Walt just ahead of him. And Rainier van der Walt going and trying to find a bit of time. Bucher still holds the fastest lap time of the race. He's a little bit further down from where he wanted to be, out in 11th position, and will be thinking what he needs to get it done. Byron, however, wants to see if he can get that pass done and dusted. As we jump on board, we can see a big look down the inside. Couldn't quite get the drive, and now needs to focus on what he can do to keep moving forward, to try and make it work here. As they put the power down, Byron gives it everything he can. You can see up to 255. And just as he comes hard on the brakes, trying to see if he can close up the distance, he does get caught up behind the 13th in class. And that is Rainer fouling up Byron, who gives a quick flash of lights there. Not going to be too keen on that. And we'll be thinking, right, I need to get past you as quick as possible. A big look down the inside at the 100-meter mark. Not going to be an easy one. Overshoots it a little bit just to try and clear past the traffic. And seeing Vian has a little bit of room ahead of him, we'll be thinking, right, what do I need to do to make this work, to try and stay in for the fight, and to see if I can still close up the run. A monumental charge from all competitors, trying to get that little bit of a run. Chris Collison finds himself into the back of Daniel Jordan, trying to see if he can clear on by, and whether it's going to be the easiest of runs. Daniel Jordan defending that 6th position, does not want to lose out a bit of time here, but Chris Collison burning the wick of the virtual energy and will be starting to feel a bit of pressure as it's gone 5:15 here in Bahrain. The drivers starting to feel the pressure for round 3 of the Project Vapour Evening Dash, powered by Track Titan. Trying to give it that little bit of an extra push, trying to see if it's going to work for them. Ultimately, it's going to come down to who can give a solid run up through the order. And Daniel Jordan, now maintaining that 6th position, does not want to lose out any ground. The drivers will cast their eyes to the virtual energy of all their cars and think, right, will it be able to see me to the end? As so far, our top first all the way down to 5th position find themselves in the below 22% of virtual energy. Chris Collison finds himself on 18%. However, our hypercars going that little bit further. Brandon Kruger, leader of the race, ahead of Carl Oosthuizen by 9, nearly 10 seconds at the moment, as he looks to try and clear past the likes of Leclerc Besson, and will have no problem in doing so. Carl hoping to keep the momentum going as Johan Bloknoot feeling the pressure out there, trying to see what he can do to get it done and how he can keep moving forward to see if they can keep that little bit of a drive. Jakob Kutzer a little further back, hoping to get the run as it's side by side for Chris Collison and Daniel Jordan as they dive down into the long right-hander. It's going to be Chris managing to get the drive, but can he defend the outside line? Can he hold Daniel Jordan that little bit further as they sweep into the S's, trying to get that bit of momentum? The small block Lexus V8 battling against the inline inline 6. Oh, in contact between the two. A quick move over from Chris Collison over the nose of Daniel Jordan. Unfortunately, finds himself pointing in the wrong direction. The two landed up with that little bit of contact, and unfortunately costing him a bit of time. Let's take a quick look at that as we jump on board the dash of Chris Collison. as he tried to go and take a swing over Daniel Jordan. Sweeping into the S's. And here is a bit of an onboard look of what happened. Went in for the inside, and just as he went for the right-hand corner, unfortunately a clip between the two saw that spin, and ultimately that loss of position on both their parts, and will be thinking that's not exactly how they wanted to go. That is not what they wanted to see the race go as. And now Daniel Jordan leading out Chris Collison, who's starting to fall slowly back into the clutches of Greg Coates, who's further behind in the Porsche. Not an easy time out there for our competitors, as Conor Bergstrom clearing past Mahath Musa is going to be his number one priority. That 11th position in the GT3 class, going and keeping an easy and defensive line, while David van Wyk starts to open up a little bit of room to Conor Bergstrom. Conor, after having a taste of the top, now trying to figure out, can he see it that little through, holding on to the top 5, and will be desperately trying his luck. However, Chris Collison down to 7% of virtual energy. He's been burning it as hard as possible. Paul Fenter, 9.8. Jakob Kutzer finds himself at 18.8. They are the lowest of all their classes. And coming down to the wire of what can they do to make it work, to see these cars to the end, to try and finish out the last 10 minutes of the race. But I do think for some it's going to come down to a splash and dash, as much as many of the drivers not wanting to have that happen. Well, it's going to be one they need to keep in mind. Ari Fenter finds himself with the yellow flag out on circuit. Quick cast eyes over to the Porsche driver. Ari runs off into the dirt, over rotates, spins round, nearly having contact with Leclerc Besson. We had to try and take a little bit of evasive action there to dodge out of the way, and Ari not finding a solid bit of time. Finds himself unfortunately a little bit down on his luck, and will have to clear past Daniel Jordan and Herman Percival, who are fighting out for class position at the moment. Ari's going to have the straight line, but can he keep the grip working in his favor as Byron dives into the pits for his second run through in the pit lane? Byron hoping for an undercut. Can he make it work over Vian Putter, who will need to get himself sorted? Leclerc Besson dives into the pit. Jeffrey LaRue dives into the pit as the rest of the field come absolutely giving it everything they can. Paul Fenter finds his way into the pits. Now it's Vian Putter, Leclerc Besson, Herman Percival, Daniel Jordan, who hold on to the top 4. They will need to consider their pit stops rather wisely here, as not to be caught out on the next lap. They will do everything they can to make it work, as we do see the likes of Jan Blithno, third place in class, getting the run. Herman Percival moves on forward to try and clear the back markers, as Daniel Jordan going and immediately trying to close up that gap, trying to see if he can go onto the attack yet again. Daniel Jordan, so far a top class race for him, up 10 positions from where he started, as one of our hottest chargers out there continues to battle out and see it through to the end. Can he make it work to hold on to that massive gain in this race? Vian Putter finds himself now down to an energy level of 1.6. It's now a race, but it can catch you out, as Conor Bergstrom under a bit of pressure to clear past David van Wyk. They split the Porsche down the middle, and a solid run on both competitors to get it done. And unfortunately that was Greg Kutz, who found himself getting caught out, and now Conor having to lead out ahead of David van Wyk. A quick flash of lights between the two, and once again David van Wyk, multiple flashes to Conor Bergstrom. There was no contact between them, but Conor took the advantage, and ran off wide. He got caught in the mirrors there, and unfortunately found himself off track. David van Wyk flashed his lights, a little bit of a distraction coming into play, and David van Wyk finds himself back up into 5th place, as Conor Bergstrom falls down into 6th, and we'll be thinking, right, what do we need to do to try and reclaim a bit of time? Vian Putter into the pits, along with Leclerc beside, meaning the handover to the lead of the race in the GT3 class. Herman Percival going to go a bit longer as he's tailed by Daniel Jordan as well, trying to see what they can do to get that run, as Vian Putter tries to exit pit lane as quick as he can. Doesn't want to get a speeding fine here and will be losing out a bit of time, but looks to be holding on to that first place. He's going to be more than happy on that solid run after the pit stop. Crucial pit stop timing coming into play. Back up to our hypercars. Connor finds himself right into the back of David van Veek, looking to try and clear on by. This is going to be a huge run on his part to try and make it work as we jump on the dash of Conor Bergstrom's BMW, trying to hunt down an opportunity here to move on forward. Sinks it in a little bit deep, and David van Veek gets a better exit as they get immediately flat onto the power. Quick wiggle to the left and right as Bergstrom once again trying to find that solid charge, trying to move up through the order, but will need to get ahead of the RTA driver, David van Veek. Team RTA has been a dominating force since coming to LMU here at Project Vapour Evening Dash, and yet again showing that they can keep a solid run. It is the 14 position GT3 that was not happy on that pass, and will be thinking, right, that was not quite exactly what I want to have happen. And a little bit of a dive down the inside. Jan Russo going and showing he's a little bit of distaste for that. Gave a quick flash just to the hypercar saying, hey, just a reminder, we're still here. You can't just shove us out of the way. Herman Percival aiming towards pit lane, and so is Daniel Jordan as they both pile into the pits. Both managing to get in right on the last as Vian Putter will try and close up the gap. Byron Landegren trying to close up to Bucas now, who has managed to move up into 4th overall, holds the fastest lap of the race, and Byron in 5th will be trying to close up that gap as he's done his pit stop. He's got it over and done with, and now it's a fight out for position. From holding on to 2nd place in this race, he finds himself a little bit further down from where he wanted to be, and will be thinking, right, how can he clear past Bucas as fast as possible, and to see if he can try and mitigate some of the points loss in the championship as we enter the dying stages of the race. It's 4 minutes and 53 seconds to go, with every single driver thinking on what they need to do to make it work. Mahath Musa and Herman Percival side by side as Herman comes out of the pits. Daniel Jordan joins into the party. Now Mahath Musa is the cork in the bottle. Herman Percival, Daniel Jordan, and right behind them, Paul Venter looking for an opportunity to move on forward. Paul takes the dive on Daniel Jordan down the inside line. Can he make it work? Herman Percival gets caught up as well as they do foul up the hypercar. Daniel Jordan is the one that loses out the spot, and now Paul Venter hunts down Herman Percival as they split a solid run against the likes of Daniel Jordan. And now we'll be thinking, what's going to be the game plan to move up through the order and ultimately stay in for the run? That's Isam Domingo, who finds himself just trying to navigate his way through. He does get past Mahath Musa, who will be saying thank heavens on that one not to lose too much time, as Paul Venter and Herman Percival now chase each other down. Mahath Musa's got a little bit of breathing room, but not enough to come off that throttle. He'll be thinking, what does he need to do to hold on to 6th in class, and so far 16th overall. Venter takes a bit of a shallower line here at Bahrain, hoping to get the run on Percival, but just couldn't quite get it done. Herman managing to open up that gap just enough. And now Daniel Jordan out in the BMW, hoping to go and throw a bit of Lego underneath the feet of Paul Venter to see if he can try and get that pass and ultimately make it work in his favor. Both drivers leading on for a solid bit of effort here, but it's not going to be an easy one. Daniel Jordan once again has a look right into the back of Paul Venter as they head down. Here's Sam Domingo into the pits for his final stop. Ran it right down to the clock. 2 minutes and 52 seconds to go as the drivers continue on a little bit of a hard push now. Now it's about getting it to the line. Who's going to see it through? Well, Andre Sorodio taking the big gamble here out in the Aston Martin Valkyrie is down to 3.9 virtual energy left in the tank. Connor Bergstrom, 9.4 left in the tank as they really trying to see if they can carry it through. For the next 2 minutes and 20 seconds, they're going to have to lift and coast as much as possible or risk going down pit lane to get themselves sorted out and possibly running into further trouble. Issam Domingo, after a drive-through penalty and getting into the pits, finds himself behind Ari Fenter and will be thinking, what does he need to make it work? David van Veek running out wide as he falls off the line. Here, Bucas going to be saying thank you very much to that one and continues on his drive. Bucas having a solid run here, finds himself second in class behind Vian Putter, 3 seconds adrift. Sorodio, sick and tired of the gamble, will come into the pits and serve his pit stop to try and see it through to the end. Unfortunately, not enough to get himself across the line with that 1.6. Unfortunately, will be losing out, thinking what could have been the race, unfortunately unraveled underneath him. Leclerc Blasson, Jeffrey Leroux now tail each other, trying to push on that little bit more as they get overtaken by Kyle Oosthuizen of the Hypercar, who finds himself in second place. Leclerc Blasson hoping to get past Jeffrey Leroux to take up that 4th place spot, but will be thinking, right, what's the game plan? How am I going to make this work? What do I need to do to make a solid drive here tonight to really move on forward? For David van Veek and Andre Sorodio, they find themselves out on circuit. Sorodio out in that Aston Martin Valkyrie gets a flash as David van Veek going, and once again, just before the corners, flashes his lights to try and distract the driver, to make him look in those mirrors, and it's going to be a side-by-side battle between the two. Little bit of catching up as Leclerc Blasson picks up a drive-through penalty, and on the last remaining laps, will find that he is now, unfortunately, losing out of the top 5. A gut-wrenching punch for the driver as Brandon Kruger marches his way through. He has been a dominating force out on circuit and will be happy on a solid result. Connor Bergstrom into the pits will fall out of that 4th position right at the last. But it's going to be all smiles for RTA as it's a solid run from Brandon Kruger, yet again taking up the points in the hypercar class. Yet again takes on a stellar run, and Vian Putter holding on to the lead of the GT3 will be more than happy with that as he does see the leader come around. This is going to be it. Both on their final lap now, and both leaders of the classes follow through. Kruger and Vian Putter have done enough to see it through to the end, to push that little bit more, and ultimately, as they come across the line, Brandon Kruger takes victory here at Bahrain for round 3 of the evening dash. Kyle Oosthuizen will take up 2nd place with Jan Bluchnoot up into 3rd. It is a solid run for Vian Putter, Gerrit Bucas, and Byron Landegren taking the top 3 of their classes, and going to be smiling ear to ear on that one. Jeffrey Leroux has done everything he could to see it through to the line as the rest of the drivers come through after a stellar result, after an incredible run through the order. It required everyone to dig deep to really see if they can make it through, as it's a run for Rob van der Heever and Daniel charging down to the wire. Both are running on fumes here as it's side by side. They're fighting out for 12th and 13th, so it's not completely gone and out of the water just as yet. Rob loses out the drive. Daniel gets the momentum, clears on through. Can he try and bring it back in the closing stages of this race? I think it's going to be a bit of a hard work one to get it done. Steven Vessels also running on fumes from his car and is yet to cross the line, along with Connor Bergstrom and Andre Sorodio, hoping to finish out the pack of our hypercars. But only 3 remain for the GT3s. Daniel, Rob and Johan Russell all going and pushing their way down to the wire here, and they're going to be cutting it fine on virtual energy as they come across. What a solid run from both competitors. Wow, oh wow, folks. What a race. What an absolute race. And let's take a look at our provisional results on this incredible run. See if we can bring it up. It's going to be Vian Putter taking the win in the GT3s with Garrett Bucas, Byron Landegren, Jeffrey LaRue, Mahath Musa, Herman Percival, Paul Fenter, Daniel Jordan, along with Chris Carlson, Leclerc Basson rounding out your top 10 as they got a solid run to a line. Greg Kutz finishes out in 11th with Daniel van der Venter, Rob van der Heerve, and Jan Russell finishing out on the lead lap. Brandon van der Walt will finish up one lap down in 15th. Unfortunately, for Mordred Claassens, only Brandon, Werner van Rooyen, and Dylan Prudgie, it's a non-finish for them. Looking back up to our hypercars, though, it's Brandon Kruger who took the overall victory, 8 seconds ahead of Kyle Oosthuizen, Johan Blicknoot, Steven Vessels, Conor Bergstrom, Andres Rodio, David van Veek, Jaco Kutzer, Ari Fenter, and Isson Domingo round out your top 10. And it will be Darren Miller, Jacques Slater, Mario Circle, and the likes of Jelmer Mulner. Unfortunately, all DNFs in the race. Let's take a quick break and we'll be back shortly with our interviews. Well, with that being said, a solid result here tonight for our competitors, and it looks like everyone having a great party before it's even started. It's going to be Brandon Kruger. He's going to be more than happy on his effort, managing to take out the win here in the hypercar class. A solid result on his part to really make it work to hold on to the lead of the hypercar class. And we'll be thinking, what does he need to do to continue on his championship run in the hypercars after a stellar effort. A great run from them, but we'll be keeping an eye on how it's going to work out there for Team RTA and ultimately keeping a solid run down to the wire. Great run from each of our competitors here, and it does look like all our drivers fortunately a little too busy to come and have a chat to us, so that will be that, and it's going to be still a great season of racing. An absolutely incredible run from all our competitors here tonight on a stellar effort to really bring it across the line, to really fight out against the high temperatures of Bahrain out in the deserts and managing to move up through the order. The Project Vapour Evening Dash Round 3 concludes, but we're not done with the season just as yet. As we head over to Spa-Francorchamps next week on the 26th of August, we will be taking on an absolutely stellar fight, and it's not to be missed. So keep an eye out, folks. Spa coming up next week for our evening dash powered by Track Titan. And if you're looking to go and improve your driving to really stand at the top of the pack, and you want to find out that little bit of momentum needed to really get your way to the top of the pack, look no further than Track Titan, an AI personalized to you to help figure out strategy, pit stops, and to try and figure out how can you get that little bit more momentum in the race, as well as adjustments to setup. Absolutely crucial to really find out those little minor seconds. Whether you're a beginner or a veteran, Track Titan's got you covered. But folks, it's been an incredible evening here at Project Vapour, and we're looking forward to having you next week. So folks, like always, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon. A big thank you to all our drivers and teams joining us here tonight. Big thank you to all the admin behind the scenes, and a big thank you to our title sponsor, Track Titan. But most importantly, a huge shout out to you out in the virtual grandstands. Without you, we wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be fighting our way to the top. And this is going to be an incredible one. Round 3 concludes. We're now halfway through the season. Spa-Francorchamps up next. This is going to be an incredible one. From myself, Stephen Koenig. We look forward to seeing you next time. Right here. Same place, same time. And folks, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everybody.